You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition. And it lies between the pit of one's fears and the summit of one's knowledge. You are now traveling through a dimension of imagination. You just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and if this is your first time listening, Anthology is one man's examination of the Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer. Each podcast, I share my first impressions, analysis, and overall thoughts on Rod Serling's iconic series, one episode at a time. However, in this bonus episode series, I'm reviewing Monkeypaw Productions' Twilight Zone reboot on CBS All-Access, hosted by Jordan Peele. You can find more of Anthology as well as a full episode archive at anthologypod.com. And if you want to contact me, you can use the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod, tweet me at OVAnthologypod, or send an email to matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And so today is actually a very special episode because for two reasons. One, I finished my reviews of the Twilight Zone, the new series, and it is, it's nice to finally have that just there. I've got those reviews done and everything's, complete until next season. So, that's great. And then also for the other reason is that I am joined by my friend and co-host from my other podcasts, Anthony Tiny Ramion.
Hello.
Hi, Tiny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Does it feel weird? I think I did this whole bit when you were on for the time element, but does it feel weird?
No.
Oh, okay. Because you're in my house now.
We're always at your house.
Yeah, well, that's true. This is the Obsessive Viewer Studios.
Physically.
Yes, but yeah, you're the guest. Don't speak until you're spoken to.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, just kidding. So today on the podcast, we're going to be discussing, just our overall thoughts on season 1 of the Twilight Zone on CBS All-Access.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, well, that's gonna make for a fun conversation.
JK.
Yeah. But let's talk about you, Tiny.
Okay.
So you've been on the podcast before.
I have.
Twice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You were on for the time element, and then you were also on with the special relaunch episode because I kind of just did that on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
So my listeners are familiar with, your voice, and I say my listeners, there is quite a bit of overlap among the three podcasts, but
yeah.
Kind of feel like a lot more people listen to this podcast than the other two.
Yeah.
So,
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But watch out, Anthology, because Tower Junkies is coming for you.
TJ.
Yeah.
On the mic.
If we can ever get more consistent with that.
Yeah, ever.
Yeah. So anyway, tell us about your history with, the Twilight Zone and the podcast, like how much of a fan you are of it.
Well, it was a dreary Tuesday night in 1987. Bonnie Ramion was on her way to the hospital. I'm kidding.
Did you do that before?
I think I have done that before, yeah.
I can't remember if that was like for the time element or not.
It probably was.
I don't know. Yeah. That's good. Nice.
It's like we're in an episode of the Twilight Zone.
It is. It's like I'm reliving this conversation.
It's about deja vu.
Yes.
Anyways.
We could have had so much fun on the Patreon stuff because I would have asked you so many questions about Twilight Zone. Anyway, go ahead.
I have a pretty unfamiliar, fleeting relationship with the Twilight Zone. Up until you started the podcast, I had seen a handful of episodes as a kid, and that's it. That's my only relationship to the show.
Interesting.
And I don't even really remember them that well, but I remember being a little bit freaked out or creeped out or intrigued by them. I remember that. And then I have a lot of respect for the show just because of its place in the echelon of science fiction and television in general. So I have a lot of respect for the show, but I haven't seen a lot of it. And the original series, I'm like halfway through the first season. I've probably seen 15 episodes or so.
Nice.
And for whatever reason, I just don't find myself watching it because I think it's one of those things where I feel like because of the weight of the show and the the intelligence of the show. I feel like I really need to be in the zone to watch it.
And you can only watch it at Twilight.
Pun not intended. Yeah. So I feel myself almost avoiding it a lot of the time for that reason. And I'll end up watching something random or whatever. But my goal is to watch, all, was it 4 seasons of the original? 5 seasons of the original, series. And making my way through all of it. Like, I want to do that eventually. And whenever I watch it, whenever I watch it, I'm like, holy shit, this is great. I need to watch more of it, and I really like it, and it's great. But for the reasons I stated, it's a very slow burn for me, so.
That's interesting, because if I didn't have this podcast or anything, like, I would have eventually watched it. Like, I would eventually have taken the plunge, because I think one of the big reasons why I started the podcast was I wanted to watch it, but also one of the reasons I wanted to watch it was because I really loved Black Mirror, and everyone was like, oh, it's like the Twilight Zone with technology now. Which, now that I'm two seasons deep in the Twilight Zone, I know that they're very different shows.
Yeah.
And they're only kind of similar in certain respects. But if I didn't have the burden of this show, I would have flown through the Twilight Zone. Like, I would have binged it and rewatched it and everything.
Really?
Yeah, because they're 25-minute episodes, they're easily digestible, but they pack an emotional punch and everything. But if I wasn't so focused on this being like a first-time viewer podcast of it, I would have flown through it. But
yeah, I
have to pace myself.
Right.
And sometimes that means taking a 1-year hiatus, in which I don't get to watch any Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will never happen again, guys. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about you, and then we'll talk about the new series. So introduce for the audience, like, who you are, our connection, and I did this the last time you were on, but pitch me the 2 podcasts that we do.
So I know Matt from quote unquote back in the day.
Yes.
We kind of grew up together. We met in junior high, and we became friends and reconnected more after high school / college, and worked together for years, at night at a security job, and just talked about like movies and TV shows all the time. And so, we had a friend who was into podcasting, and so he was like, you guys should start a podcast. You guys should start a podcast. You guys should start a podcast. He just told us for a long time. And so we finally decided to do it, and that became the Obsessive Viewer.
Now, what's the Obsessive Viewer?
Where we talk about movies and TV shows on a regular basis.
Sounds like a really broad podcast.
It is very broad.
Would have benefited from being a more niche podcast.
Little bit. But it's a fun podcast. It's evolved a lot over the years. We had a steady third host for a couple years, and then he got married and had a couple kids, and he was in school, and he doesn't have a life, basically. Right. Or actually, he has a life. Yeah. He has a huge life. And so he didn't have time for the podcast, and so it's kind of just the 2 of us now, and we've had some more hosts come in, and we had like topic-driven episodes for a while, and themes that we would follow and stuff like that, and given episodes. It's kind of evolved more into a lot of reviews. Yeah. Recently over the last year or so, which is great. So that's the Obsessive Viewer. And then, I think we've both been big Stephen King fans for years, since we were kids pretty much. And it blossomed more when we had that job, because we had a lot of time to read in that job. And, so when we were in that job, we both read, Stephen King's The Dark Tower series at the same time. It took each of us about a year.
Yeah, God, that was so cool.
It was really cool. So much fun to read, and that was fun.
And to read it together.
And talk about it, really cool. That was great. So, stemming from that, we started a Stephen King podcast, which originally was supposed to be mostly about The Dark Tower. It's called Tower Junkies. But it's more of a general Stephen King podcast, I think. We kind of had to steer it in that direction. Yeah. There's only so much you can really... there's tons of content we could do about The Dark Tower, but it's such a huge thing to tackle. And there's so much going on in the Stephen King verse right now with adaptations and stuff like that, and it's really exciting. So yeah, we talk about The Dark Tower and a bunch of other Stephen King properties. We review the adaptations, short stories, news, and we're reading the books, all the millions of novels he's written, it seems like.
There's no shortage of content.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So.
What's coming up on Tower Junkies, do you think?
Well, we have a few books read that we need to review.
We do.
The Tommyknockers, we need to review that. And The Outsider, which came out 2 years ago, last.
Right, yeah.
Is that his most recent book?
Came out last year.
No, he released Elevation.
Elevation, yeah. Which you read, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Which we also need to review.
Yeah, we need to review that.
So those are the two books we need to review. And then we are probably... Well, I'm not sure when these are going to come out, but there was recently a trailer released for Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Which is a sequel to The Shining, in which... watched the trailer and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I knew nothing about Dr. Sleep, and so seeing the trailer, I was like, wow, this is just reigniting passion for The Shining, because I haven't read that book since I was a kid, and so I was like, I'm going to resubscribe to Audible, I'm going to download The Shining, and I'm going to listen to it just based on this trailer, because I was so excited about it. So we're going to do a review of The Shining book and The Shining movie and The Shining series, and then we want to read Dr. Sleep. And I think by the time we get those 4 reviews done and some of that other stuff I mentioned, the film will have come out.
Yep.
Also, It Part 2. Man, there's just a lot. Like I said, it's a very exciting time in the Stephen King verse. So, we got a lot on our plates.
We do. Oh, yeah.
With those two podcasts.
So... Yeah, so look forward to more unannounced hiatuses on Anthology as we do all that.
Right.
Just kidding, guys. I promise. I swear. So going back to Twilight Zone and everything, how did you feel going into season 1 of this new series? Like, were you excited about Jordan Peele's take? Although people say like, oh, Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone, he's a producer on it, so he didn't have as much input as like Serling did.
Right. Yeah, I was pretty excited for it. When it was originally announced, I saw the headline. I was like, oh crap. And then I saw on CBS and I was like, okay. That was the biggest kicker for me, or the biggest crutch.
That it was on CBS.
That it was on network.
That it was on CBS,
a network. CBS in general.
Okay.
Cause I was like, the Twilight Zone is begging for, a cable.
See, that's really interesting.
Or Netflix or Amazon or something like that. That's what I wanted it to be on.
Okay. When you say that, is it just in terms of like production value or like content wise? Cause like the
Both.
original, okay. Cause like the original, like one of the things that people have been complaining about with the new season is that, the original is timeless and it's also family friendly. Like you can introduce it to your kids and stuff and like all that. But like people are like, well, they're cursing in the Twilight Zone now, and that's rah.
Yeah.
Which there's like one episode where I was like, okay, that's a little overdoing it with the profanity. But did you feel any? Because you said that you're about halfway through the first season. Did you feel like watching these episodes? Did you feel like it was content wise it was too severe, or did it not register with you?
I think why I was hesitant about CBS is just the fact that the networks are so formulaic, and they want their shows to fit into boxes.
Yeah.
And the Twilight Zone is the definition of outside the box.
Right.
And I was like, it just seemed like the worst fit for me, to me. Anyway, that's what networks have evolved into. I think back in the day, what network was Twilight Zone on originally? CBS, okay.
Yep.
Like 50 years ago, CBS was a completely different animal. Network TV was a completely different thing. But it's, like I said, it's just evolved.
It was the only game in town.
Right. It was yeah. And so that's where all the innovation was on the networks.
Yeah.
And that was great. And like, I respect them for that. But I feel like the networks are just dying. I feel like none of the innovation in television is on networks anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe a tiny percent.
It's funny, and this is a slight tangent, but like there's a show coming out on CBS called The Unicorn. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
So I'm probably going to check it out. Just, you'll know why here in a second. But, it's about like a recently widowed Walton Goggins striking out in like the dating world and everything. But it's like the trailer, it looks kind of charming because he has a good persona, good energy for the role. But it's also like, this is the same freaking sitcom that we've seen for the last for several decades at this point. Like,
right.
It's just so formulaic and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's funny you said that, the Twilight Zone belongs like on like cable or having that kind of freedom and stuff, because that kind of reminds me of like The Outer Limits, because The Outer Limits was on
Showtime?
Well, the original series I think was on ABC.
Oh, okay.
Back in the mid to late 60s, and then the relaunch or the revival was on Showtime and then moved to Sci-Fi.
Oh, okay.
And that ran for like 7 seasons.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's just, it's interesting. It's interesting. And I guess I could ask you this, because I don't think I've ever really asked you this. How do you feel about the sci-fi anthology format, the anthology format of standalone episodes of TV telling a self-contained story? In particular, sci-fi also.
Yeah, most of it is pretty famous. I mean, like the Twilight Zone is obviously the shining example. It's a great format for sci-fi mystery horror, the genre bending that the Twilight Zone does. Anthology is just perfect for that. I feel like so much adaptations and stories are pushed into long format. Or like, I feel like a lot of famous stuff is novels and movies, and I think we've kind of lost touch with the short story, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what anthology sci-fi is. It's kind of short stories. And I feel like those genres, mystery, horror, and sci-fi, adapt well to an anthology format. I feel like it's a good marriage of genre and format.
Yeah, because it's a different world every episode.
Right.
Yeah.
And there can be pitfalls, and it's not to say that horror and mystery and sci-fi don't adapt well to an hour and a half long movie. I'm not, or a giant novel. I'm not saying that. Arguably the greatest sci-fi novel of all time is Dune sci-fi. That's a big deal. But, for whatever reason, it just works. Like, if you look at some of the old episodes of The Twilight Zone, what they're able to achieve in 25 minutes is really impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my favorite vintage episode, like I said, I've only seen about 15 of them, is, I don't even remember what it's called, the one with the robot, where the guy is isolated on the planet.
Yeah.
Which is a theme I mention a lot on this podcast. It's one of my favorite plot devices, isolation. I love, one of my favorite movies is The Thing.
Yeah.
Because they're they're isolated in Antarctica. And so that aspect really drew me into the episode, and what they're able to achieve in that 25 minutes of that episode is really impressive. Like, you would think that would be the emotional ride you go through. You would think that would take 90 minutes for a full feature length, but they achieve it in 25 minutes. Yeah. It's really impressive. So the format is great. I mean, look at how successful Black Mirror has become. That sci-fi anthology has kind of been revived through that show. But yeah, I kind of want to say that I want more of it, but another thing I say all the time is that less is more when it comes to television and movies. I think less is more, and so I don't want to see a bunch of imitation shows show up where they're trying to pull off anthology stuff. And
same here, just for my sanity.
Yeah.
I would have to cover them.
Right.
It's funny though, because like I have been talking about in the main episodes. Recently, I made the decision, because I was doing bonus reviews, pairing a classic science fiction movie or show to the episode I was reviewing. And then after the relaunch, I stopped. And then after like 5 episodes of just doing just the Twilight Zone, I was like, yeah, I'll throw in science fiction theater also. So I've been doing that. I've been like pairing up, just going chronologically through science fiction theater.
Yeah.
So more work on my part, but whatever. But it's fun. It's interesting, because science fiction theater is 1955 to 1957. But like what I keep coming back to is like several of the episodes I've had or that I've seen have been like establishing like a supernatural or some kind of scientific phenomenon, and then a mystery surrounding that, and like them, like the characters trying to figure it out through science. And like sometimes it's supernatural, sometimes it's like otherworldly stuff. But like there are a couple episodes where it's just like there is a completely rational explanation for it. And like just that concept I think would be really good to revive, like for modern audiences. Like have like Bill Nye host, like in like the Rod Serling role where they're like hosting the show, and then like have it be like based like kind of hard sci-fi but based in like fact. I just think that would be pretty cool.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. So
you were excited for season 1, you were excited for the new series. I was pestering the shit out of you to watch it.
Yeah.
So overall thoughts on season 1, and then I think it would be fun to kind of go through episode by episode and just get like brief thoughts on it. So
sure.
How'd you feel overall with season 1 of the Twilight Zone? Did it meet your expectations? Did it do anything surprising? How did you feel? And yeah.
Well, before we get into it too much, I wanted to talk about CBS All-Access a little bit first.
Yes.
Because I have some thoughts on it, but I'm glad that that a network is going for the whole digital thing and streaming and stuff like that. I'm happy, but I'm pissed off or bummed to report that it's just not a very good platform.
Yeah.
The user interface has not been enjoyable for me. I think it's a very freshman effort. I don't feel like CBS put a lot of effort into it. And I feel like it's just classic network attitude. Like we're CBS. We don't have to make something real flashy and special, which is just the complete wrong attitude to have. If you look at the interfaces for any of the other services, HBO Go or Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, they're all much more friendly and enjoyable, and CBS All Access sucks. And then like paying for the base thing, you still get ads, which I'm not an ad fiend. Like that doesn't, I don't go nuts about that. Like I'm fine with them. It's not a big deal, but it just makes it, I just wasn't happy because it's not the app is not smooth and well produced. It's not a smooth production. It doesn't.
And it crapped on you.
It crapped on me a couple times. Yeah. And still, like, I watched the first 2 episodes and it just screwed me over. Like it would cut off the episode, and then I tried to go back to the episode and it won't let me fast forward at all. God. Like you can't fast forward at all. Like you have to sit there and watch the whole episode. And like, so like the end of I've still never seen the end of The Comedian.
Oh, really?
Still haven't seen it because...
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that sucks.
I know.
At what point did it cut off?
Like 5 minutes before the end, something like that.
Okay, by the way, we're going to be spoiling the entire season, guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you what happens at the end?
Well, I listened to your episode.
Oh, okay, well, never mind then.
Yeah, I kind of
Thank you.
So, yeah. So, yeah, like, it's just not... It's been a little disappointing, and I understand if it would be a little buggy or whatever. It's, their first try at it, and I could understand.
They've had Star Trek Discovery, and it's been 2 seasons.
That's true, yeah.
Like they've had CBS All Access has been a thing for a while.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's just like, fix it.
Yeah,
just fix it.
And still, like when I watched, I gave the app another shot, and like I probably went a month without watching any more episodes because I was just pissed off about the app. Maybe like 6 weeks. But I finally went back to it, and it was a little better. I don't know if they actually changed something or if whatever, but it's still like when I would play an episode, you get an ad first, which okay, whatever, not a big deal. But it would skip like whatever the length of the ad was. It would jump to that time point in the episode.
Oh God!
So it'd be like 90 seconds of ads, and it would start the episode at the 90-second point. Yeah.
Oh.
So then I'd have to rewind and go back to the beginning.
That's annoying.
It happened like 3 times.
Were you using like your Roku or smart TV?
Amazon Fire Stick.
Amazon Fire Stick.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it did it on. I used my phone too. I watched a few episodes on my phone and it did it on there too.
Jesus.
Yeah, I was pretty annoyed.
It's interesting because I have the ad-free version.
Right.
And I didn't have any of those problems, obviously.
Okay, yeah.
But what I've heard also is that the ads are so repetitious.
Yeah, they
and
are.
Like that would bother me way too much.
Yeah.
But it's it's such a weird time to be TV fans.
Yeah.
Because the landscape is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
Like I was so, I've been such a proponent of, or I've been kind of going against the grain of like people saying like, oh, I don't want to get another streaming service. And like that old argument just really gets under my skin because it's like no one's forcing you to have all of these streaming services at once. Like drop Netflix for a month and watch the Twilight Zone and then drop CBS All Access and get Netflix. Like, just, it's literally that simple. But like I remember like, I don't know. I feel like part of the problem is that CBS All Access is tied to CBS. So like there's this kind of underlying kind of idea of like, well, they're a network. They should just be network stuff. Yeah. Which I can kind of get, but I
don't want that either though. I don't want to force anybody to stay. You don't have to stay in your lane.
Exactly.
Yeah. If they want to branch out, go ahead and branch out. But I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Right.
From their standpoint, not with the Twilight Zone show, but.
Right. And it's interesting because, their show, The Good Fight, that's on CBS All Access, which is a spinoff of The Good Wife show.
Okay.
They announced that starting in July, they're actually going to be airing the Good Fight episodes on CBS, like over the air.
Okay.
And they're going to have like bleeps and stuff because it has cursing and everything in it.
Gotcha.
And I wonder if they're going to do that for the Twilight Zone. Like I would love that because it would get more eyes on the Twilight Zone.
Totally.
But yeah, so having said that, what did you think of season 1 overall, just kind of in broad terms?
I thought it was pretty solid. You asked before I had my diatribe there about the app itself, but you asked about my expectations or if it met my expectations, and I'm sorry to say it didn't. I was expecting a little bit more from it. I feel like there's some element that's missing from it, and I can't put my finger on it. I just don't know what it is. I feel like the original series, the 15 episodes or so that I watched, the word that comes to mind is it was just incredibly innovative and original. And I feel like this season didn't quite have that element to it. Sure. Didn't quite have that aspect. It didn't feel innovative. But I don't mean that to say that the episodes are derivative or unoriginal. I'm not saying that. It just doesn't feel like it doesn't. I didn't really feel like completely blown away by anything or just absolutely sucked in and just edge of my seat for pretty much any of it, really.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I was intrigued by quite a bit of it, but I wasn't on the edge of my seat. I didn't fall asleep for any of it or anything. Right. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think there was anything that was truly bad, like bad television. But there's.
Did you watch The Wonder Kid?
I did. We'll get to it, but I feel like, but I'm happy with the effort of it. Like I feel like it's all well written. I feel like everyone's heart was in the right place. The casting, I loved all the casting was fantastic. Yeah. All the stars in it and familiar faces were great. And I enjoy the hell out of Jordan Peele. I think he's got a great demeanor. I think he's not trying to be Rod Serling, right? Which is nobody can be. So why would you even try? Oh, yeah. I think he's doing a great job. I like his narration in the episodes. So yeah, there's tons of stuff to like, but I just feel like there's something missing that I can't. I feel like it's one of those things where you know it when you see it. Yeah. But it's hard to elaborate on what it is.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I mean I've poured probably over 12 hours of audio at this point. Yeah. Into the internet. Right. Talking about this show. Yeah. So my thoughts are out there. Mm-hmm. But part of like, if I may, I do feel like part of what's maybe missing, what was missing for me at least was characterization. Strong characterization. Okay. Because, and we'll talk more about this in another segment later on, but it seems like it was more issue focused rather than character focused. Yeah. And so, yeah, like there are a couple episodes where I think they got it right. Like they got it perfect. Like maybe not perfect, but they got it like they struck that balance really well. But like when you have episodes that are just built around a modern day like issue that they're covering.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are important issues that are being discussed and everything. But when you build an episode around that and build characters around that particular thing, there's the element of just an organic story doesn't fit into like an organic storytelling mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was my biggest issue with the season overall.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to go episode by episode?
Yeah, and actually what I did is I kind of have a top 10. Like I put them in order, and I thought maybe that would be the best way to run through them.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a top 10 as well, but I'll defer to you.
Okay.
So, do you want to go number 10 to 1?
Yeah,
okay.
in ascending
Countdown.
order. Yes.
All right.
So at the number 10 spot, which you just mentioned, it was the Wunderkind.
Mm-hmm.
The Wunderkind.
The Wunderkind.
This was just a bad idea for a show, for an episode. It really should have ended up on the cutting room floor, or when they were brainstorming, this should have been in, the discard pile.
Yeah.
I give them a little credit for trying it. Like, after someone got the script, they should have been like, okay, we really can't do this because this is just bad. We just can't do this. The premise is just ridiculous that a 12-year-old would run for president. It's just, and then get elected, and then it's just too ridiculous. It goes beyond sci-fi. It's like kitsch, like kitschy, or I can't even.
And that's. Yeah.
It's
my number 10 as well.
Okay.
My favorite of the season.
Okay. But I think when we originally briefly talked about the episode a little bit, like, I love John Cho.
Oh, me too.
He's great. He's a really fun actor, and like, I saw him in oh my God, what was that movie he was in last year? Searching.
Yeah.
He was great in that movie.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's 90 minutes of him, his face, and like, it's so much of him emoting, and I was like, man, that was hard. I bet that was a really hard performance for him to do, and he did a great job. That was a fun movie, and I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
And he is trying so hard in this episode.
He makes it watchable. Like, I think I was more forgiving. I don't know if I would want to say this, but I was maybe one of the more forgiving Twilight Zone podcasters for that episode.
Yeah.
Because like it got pretty was pretty poorly received.
Yeah.
But like my whole thing is like John Cho, like that performance is so earnest.
Yeah.
And he is like, it's like on another level, because it's like, it's clear that the episode is, I don't foresee a situation in which the atmosphere on the set was that this episode is working. Like, it's such an absurd kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's the thing also, is that there's no science fiction element to it. That's the biggest issue I have with it.
Yeah.
Is that there's no Twilight Zone element. There's no science fiction fantasy element to it. So, it's just, things happen that would have been better happening if there was like some kind of Twilight Zone element to it. But since there wasn't, it's just like they're asking for us to accept so much.
Yeah.
But not giving us any reason to accept it.
Right. And there were points throughout where I was like, oh man, they're really doing this? Okay. And then like literally at the end, I did one of these. I was like, like one of those laughs. I was like,
okay.
Oh my God.
So the ending, and again, we're going to be spoiling it. So when it's revealed that the Doctor is a kid.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh, really?
I really did. And I said something maybe controversial on the podcast, but I felt like that was the most Twilight Zone this season of Twilight Zone up to that point had been.
I thought that was very Twilight Zone.
Oh, yes,
that ending
nice.
was, but it was a kid wearing an oversized scrub or whatever, or smock, whatever you want to call it.
But what I love about it is that earlier in the episode it's seeded so well because I mean, just the entire episode is so absurd.
Yeah.
But when the orderly or whatever's like, the Doctor got held up, he's on a different level. Like, God damn it.
I know. It's a super high concept episode. I mean, it's kind of, if it weren't so dumb, it would be clever.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of things.
And see, that's the thing, and I've recounted it on the podcast before, so I won't say much about it, but like, it's clearly an allegory for Trump. And the Trump administration and everything.
Right.
Which I'm all about. I'm so, all about it being an allegory for it.
Right.
But I think that the show would have been so much better suited. It falls into a thing where when you look at the real life thing that it's satirizing or commenting on, there are things that have been around, like the Trump administration, the behavior of like Trump himself, like on the campaign trail, that is so ridiculously overwhelmingly like over the top.
The administration is a real life satire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't out over the top them.
Right. It's hard to satirize something that's already a satire.
Exactly.
Basically. Yeah.
So like when you do that, you get something ridiculous like, a 12-year-old kid running for president.
Right.
But I feel like they missed an opportunity where they could have had that same premise, introduce some kind of Twilight Zone element to it, so it's at least some kind of science fiction or fantasy. But like if they're going to comment on the Trump administration, do more Trump administration stuff. Like have Oliver Foley do Trumpian things that are like clearly Trump, just to, show like, oh, well, when you see a kid doing it, it's freaking ridiculous. So why not?
That's true.
Yeah, like they could have done that. If it was more grounded in reality, I think they would have gotten their point across a lot better. Yeah,
building the wall is a very 12-year-old mindset kind of thing. And,
and there's no build the wall in this. We get free video games for everyone.
Right.
Like in the review, I recounted all of his campaign promises, which is another, like, as I get farther away from it, it's like, it's so stupid. Like, dinner is before, or dessert is before dinner.
Right.
Free video games for everyone. And there's a few other, less Star Wars movies. It's like all just stupid shit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So that's our number 10.
Right. Yeah.
Any other words on the Wunderkind? Wunderkind.
The Wunderkind. What was the kid's name?
Oliver Foley, Jacob Tremblay.
Jacob Tremblay. Yeah. That poor kid had nothing to work with.
Yeah.
He basically was just annoying the whole time. I had to say that because I heaped praise upon John Cho, but I don't blame Ethan Tremblay because like Jacob Tremblay, terrible writing for him.
Yeah.
He had no choice but to just be annoying and yell.
I think
the
he
whole
did
time.
A good enough job. With
he was fine. I felt bad for him because he just didn't have much to work with.
He's a very talented actor too.
Is he? Okay.
He was the kid in Room.
Oh, that's right. He was.
Yeah.
That's where I knew his name from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yep.
It
was, by the way, just real quick, Room was just so disturbing. It really made me tremble.
God damn it.
This is stuff that my Anthology listeners don't get subjected to that much. So,
oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
I'll be your springboard, I guess.
Yeah. So Tiny, what's your number 9?
Number 9 is Not All Men.
Oh, interesting.
Which, I don't have a ton to say about it, but if you go back to probably the first, I'd say 70 to 100 episodes of The Obsessive Viewer, I talked about the movie The Purge.
Okay. I was going to say, you talked a lot about how much you hate women.
No, I do not. The movie The Purge, which I don't like at all.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about how I don't like the implication of that movie that even if that law was, or that was a real world thing where it's like everything is legal for the next 24 hours or whatever, I hated the implication that most people would just go out and purge together and do horrible things. I didn't like that implication that just because of the legal system we have, people are calm and orderly or follow the law because of the law or
so
whatever.
You don't believe that it would happen.
I don't believe it would. There would be some crazy assholes out there, but the implication was like I hated the part where Ethan Hawke was like, "Oh, that's Mr. Henderson. I didn't know he was purging with Mr. Jones from down the street." That's great. It's like,
oh yeah.
I don't like. I have neighbors that I talk to on a regular basis, and if this was a thing, they would not load up their shotgun and go stalking the streets murdering people.
Right.
And it's just like that. I just hated that, and I could not buy that premise. And it's not a horrible movie. That just like pissed me off and irked me. And I had that same notion with Not All Men because I thought it was a cool episode and a fun idea up until the end where, there was like this sci-fi element where these asteroids or these meteors were causing anyone with a Y chromosome to go nuts and just be uber misogynist and testosterone driven and savage, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was an interesting premise, and I was into it. And then at the end, they completely retconned it, and this kid was like, well, I felt it coming on or whatever, and I just chose not to.
Yeah.
And it's like the implication was that, well, all these guys were just essentially doing this because they had an excuse to do it now.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. I was like, that's just stupid. I can't get behind that premise.
I take it you haven't listened to that review yet.
I haven't gotten to that one yet.
I dive really deep into it. Well,
really? Okay.
I get, maybe, I don't know, it could be construed as nitpicking, but like, I have it in my head that episode was made in the editing. Like,
okay.
I don't think that they had a clear idea of where they were going when they had all the footage and everything.
Okay.
Because, like, there are, like, scenes that feel like insert shots.
It was a little sloppy.
Yeah.
In
like,
parts. Yeah.
Once the chaos, like, happens and everything, like, everything goes to shit, like, storytelling-wise also. Like, they see, like, one quick example is, like, they're at the gas station, worst scene of the entire season, when she picks up the meteor and she's like, we need to fight back. And she's like, that's not doing anything. Like that just halted the episode for me entirely. But then they see the guy, like, with the meteor on a chain. Yeah. Which, like, imagery is like, that's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But then when Luke Kirby comes with the same thing, Tessa Farmiga's like, what the fuck is that? It's like, you literally just saw the same thing. Like, right. It's clear, like, they maybe added that so that, you know, they would establish it as a thing that happens.
Yeah.
But it didn't connect with me that way. But I heaped it's number 6 on my list, so it's just below half. Because the demonstration or the depiction of, like, women, how women, like, feel in the world, like, everything, like, there's so much nuance to, like, Annie's life in her workplace and at home, or how she's internalizing this assault that happened, or this event that happened before. Like, the entire date thing, like, the whole cold open could have been its own self-contained short film. Yes. And it was riveting, it was terrifying.
I was gonna say, I was really into the episode. Yeah. After that.
Yeah. It's very clearly telling its story, one of the things that this season did, in my opinion, really well, maybe to the detriment of overall storytelling and everything, or characterization, I should say, is that most of, if not all episodes, take the point of view of a specific perspective and brings the audience to that perspective, whether it's like African Americans' relationship with racist institutions or police, like, brutality, or women interacting with men in and outside of the workplace and in romantic settings, and, like, the threat of men, essentially. I think what the show did really well is create perspective for viewpoints that are, by and large, discounted by a lot of vocal people in our society. Right. So yeah, but Not All Men, really mixed bag for me. Like, it kind of squandered so much goodwill that it had.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And I loved Ike Barinholtz, though.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
He's really great.
Yeah.
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 Luke Kirby is great. Oh, yeah. I love him. He plays... It is worth watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel to see him. He plays Lenny Bruce. He's really great. I don't think I'd heard of him before that show.
Oh, really? He was in...
I couldn't remember him from anything.
Take This Waltz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't seen that movie in years.
I know. I brought it up in my review because I was like, that's movie still just emotionally just devastated me.
Nice. But yeah, he's a really great actor. I hope his star continues to rise. I'll put it that way.
Me too.
He's great.
Yeah.
So
Resurrection, I think he was in.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. I think so. I don't know.
Nice. So my number 8 is The Comedian.
Interesting. That's my number 8 as well.
Okay. Which could be somewhat tainted because I didn't see the last 5 minutes.
Right.
But I really wasn't that into it up until that point.
Sure.
I think the premise is really cool though. I liked the whole thing where this torch is sort of passed to him where, you know, he can essentially gain notoriety and fame and achieve success through giving up pieces of his life. It's kind of a sell your soul to the devil kind of thing, but with a different take on it. It's not that derivative or that much of a steal from that concept, but I think it was really, but my issue was just how dumb Kumail Nanjiani's character was. Sure. Like it took him so long to figure everything out. Like he's hanging up posters for his dog, and it's like, how do you not understand what's happening? Like it's pretty straightforward. And I think part of it is the fact that this was a full length episode. This was 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah, I think 54 minutes.
And I feel like if this was more condensed in a traditional Twilight Zone style, 25 minutes, I think this could have worked even better. I think it could have worked better.
Yeah, and that's fair. A lot of people have been complaining about the lengths of the episodes and how they want it to be like the original 25 minutes, which I can meet them halfway. Like if they did instead of 10 36 to 54 minute episodes and instead did like 20 25 minute episodes, I would be more on board with that. Like I think that would be great.
Okay.
But I don't think any of these episodes felt too long for me.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah. And also, like, I don't know, I kind of feel like I try not to say, like, oh, they could cut out, like, 10 minutes here and make it better or whatever, because, like, that argument's not saying, like, oh, like, it's not saying specifically 10 minutes here. Like, it's saying just, like, it could have been 10 minutes shorter. Like, how could it have been 10 minutes shorter?
Right.
Offer that up, but
that's true. I think just him stumbling through what's going on, I think was a little frustrating. I feel like again in the 25-minute format, he would have figured it out in the first like 10 minutes, and then it would have been 10 minutes of just chaos of him, you know, in a moral conundrum, if you will, and then a few minutes of denouement or whatever would have been. I think what could be better. I'm not. It's hindsight's 20/20 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's easy to criticize once you've seen it, but
it's really funny because if I were to give you homework, watch the season 2 episode of the original series, Penny for Your Thoughts.
Okay.
It's got Dick York. He's really charismatic and everything, but talk about an episode where a character has some kind of ability but does not have the self-awareness to realize it.
Okay.
Like, it feels like half the episode is him just not realizing that he can read people's thoughts. And it's like, it's so kind of frustrating because it's just like,
yeah.
He keeps saying like, what did you say? Like, it's like, you're watching their mouth not move and you're hearing their voice. Like, catch up with us.
Right.
But anyway, the comedian, yeah, I kind of got, like, it's my number 8 as well, and I kind of got, it kind of dropped a little bit the farther I got away from it because, I don't know, maybe because I was watching it so many times.
Yeah.
But I liked Kumail's performance though.
I love Kumail Nanjiani. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic.
Yep.
And every time I see him, I want to see more of him. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of his, and he was fine. He did a good job in this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it was just, yeah, and pacing, I guess you could just chalk it up to pacing, and then I don't know. I think, I'm trying to figure out why I didn't like it that much. And like I said, I think it's kind of tainted by the fact that I didn't really see the last 5 minutes, but,
right.
I think it was kind of predictable that that's the direction it was going to go.
Yeah.
I know in your review you said that there were like basically 2 things that could happen,
right.
and yeah, you kind of picked it out, but it was still interesting. I kind of wanted like the set was really cool of the nightclub. I thought that was well done. But I think on the back wall wasn't there like a big mural?
Yeah, the back wall was
of people.
Big mural.
I think it would have been cool if they had done kind of like a Shining thing and the end of The Shining, Is that in the episode?
They did, yeah.
Fuck.
That's the last shot of the episode.
I was thinking that. I was like, man, that'd be kind of cool if they did like a Jack Torrance kind of thing at the end of The Shining. And
it's a little too. It's a little too on the. Well, it's a little too on the nose.
Fucking CBS All-Access.
Yeah. It's a little too on the nose, like pretty much everything in the season was. But like, it's just basically Peele is giving his closing narration, then it just zooms in on Kumail's face in the mural.
Okay. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I liked it. A lot of people kind of had some issues with it, but I liked it.
His comedian friend was pretty good too. I'm not familiar with her.
Yeah.
She did a good job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of smart-assy.
Yeah.
I liked her. So yeah, it's again a really, really good concept. Just the execution was lacking a little bit.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in the review, but I don't know if this was an intentional thing. But the comedian is also the title of a Rod Serling script from Playhouse 90 from back in the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But also, Alex Rubens, who wrote the episode, was on the Writers Panel podcast, and he talked about how he was frustrated with how people were saying that the jokes weren't funny in it because the jokes aren't supposed to be funny. It's not supposed to be funny. Anyway, what's your number?
That's the point. He's not funny.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Number 7 is Point of Origin.
Oh, interesting. That's my number 9, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't really know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
And then you kind of figure it out, and it's sort of open-ended. I think it was... I'm glad they tackled immigration as an issue. I think that was a good idea. And I think this was... one thing that they did really well is that I think this was actually pretty scary and horrific. You know, the whole, there's a line where the housekeeper says like, you knew this was happening, but it's easy for you to, you know, fold up the newspaper or turn off the news or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was a great line because I think we're all kind of guilty of that, you know?
Yeah. Because she says, I had no idea they were going to take you to a place like this.
Right.
She's like, yeah, you did.
Right.
It's easy to turn off your TV, but, you know, we're here.
Right. And just the whole, you know, her, being essentially kidnapped and tortured and kept in this isolated, horrible building, and just like it was all scary and like horrifying is the word I would say. And that's kind of, I think, a bit of a reality for people who are in that situation, and that's they
right now,
right.
Things are happening.
They hit that out of the park, and that was a good job, and I appreciated that part of the episode, and I was very into that. And then once you kind of figure out what's going on, that she's from another dimension, and she's essentially a dimensional immigrant, if you will.
Yeah. And
whoever this agent of the government, assumedly, is persecuting her for it. That's a crazy premise, and it's scary, and I liked it, and I think they even executed it pretty well. Yeah. But I feel like it just kind of dropped. She escapes, and then she gets taken back, and it kind of ends. And like I thought I kind of wanted something a little more perfunctory, or not perfunctory, but like
substantial.
Something more conclusive, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. So I had the same kind of like disconnect when I watched it, even when I reviewed it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I listened to Tom Elliott's the Twilight Zone podcast. He did this great thing where, and I'm sorry for the repetition, everyone, but he did this great thing where every week he would have listeners submit emails or voice recordings of their thoughts on each episode. Mm-hmm. And he had one listener on the Point of Origin one that just kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, you told me about this, but it's...
No, not that.
Okay.
I may be conflating it because I think I heard this on another podcast. So it wasn't that. Anyway, I had heard somewhere that they made the connection to where the ending where William is telling her, and I meant to look up the exact words because I think it may have been, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it may have been like a direct reference to an X-Files episode that I just watched. But he says, he tells Eve when she comes home after escaping, he's like, you're not who you are, or you're not who you are.
Okay.
Which I just watched the episode Ice of the X-Files, and like that's a repeated line throughout the episodes. You're not who you are.
Okay.
And Glenn Morgan, he didn't write the episode for Point of Origin, but he's a producer on Twilight Zone, and he was a producer on X-Files. But anyway, when William says you're not who you are, and he just basically is rejecting her and everything, that is an interesting mirror to earlier in the episode when the maid, what is her name? I can't remember her name. Yeah, when she's asking about getting her grandson into the charter school by using their address, Eve's like, your family, of course, your family. We can do this, is no problem. But it's still like shaking up the status quo a little bit. But then now that it's been exposed that she's not actually like a natural citizen of this dimension, she is herself an immigrant who, like, going back to her relationship with the housekeeper, she's putting up this facade saying like, oh, your family and everything, of course, but it's like she's not really her family.
Yeah.
It's just something she's putting on a face. But now, like later in the episode, when it's revealed that she herself is an immigrant of sorts, her family has the same reaction to her, like, you're family, but you're not our family. Like, you're not who you are, so we're pushing you away. We're not going to interact or anything, or we're not going to intervene with it because you're not really our family.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting connection. Still is a little shaky and everything.
Yeah.
But,
that's cool. I didn't make that connection.
Yeah.
But
again, another podcast did it, so.
Right.
Can't take credit.
I think my issue with that was that, that scene where the father and the husband says that. My problem was that I couldn't buy that part because it's not the same thing as the housekeeper being deported, because that's literally his wife. They have children together. It's it's different. The fact that he would have that attitude, I think is, I mean, I guess I'm being a little too harsh because, she duped him, if you will.
Yeah. But then again, and I brought this up and I was kind of nervous to bring it up, but like, it's kind of a mixed metaphor a little bit. It's like kind of a mixed bag because she's an immigrant, but she has no memory of it. So that is like her arc supposed to be that of like, it would have been a more compelling episode if she was trying to reconcile like her true nature with like her adopted nature in this dimension. Like if there was a clear, if she knew the whole time, it would be a completely different. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. It was a little goofy. And I didn't, it's number 7, but like, I didn't hate the episode, or like, I thought it was still a good episode, and like, I think it was important and relatively well done. I think it just had some plot issues or some development issues that kind of stagnated or didn't pay off, I guess.
Yeah.
And plus one of the big things, and this is complete bias on my part, I really just can't stand Jennifer Goodwin.
Oh, interesting.
I think she's annoying as shit.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I've never enjoyed her performances ever.
I really only know her from He's Just Not That Into You.
Okay. She was on Big Love.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I never saw it.
She's just annoying.
I think she did a great job, honestly. There are moments where she really embodies this, like, privileged, white, rich woman kind of thing.
See, I thought that was over the top.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
I just couldn't get into it.
Maybe it was, but I don't know. I was just into it. Like, the way that she, and it kind of gets on my nerves just a little bit, but it's also, like, it's kind of feels like it's maybe supposed to, but like the way she's like constantly saying like, we can give you money to Matheson Charter School or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like their answer to everything is money and lawyers.
Yeah.
And then also like when she's like embarrassed at the checkout counter, it's like in the way that she's trying to put up like this like facade that she's like, oh, everything's fine or whatever. But then she's like, you can take your goddamn groceries, but she kind of whispers it. I don't know. I just kind of liked that. I thought she did a good job, but to each their own.
Yeah.
That's your number 7. So what's your number 6?
Number 6 is Nightmare at 30,000 Feet.
Oh, interesting. That's my number 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I almost feel bad putting it here, but like this, I think a lot of this positioning as number 6 on my list is a little bit, is biased.
Okay.
Cause I was expecting the episode to be more in tune with the original.
Okay.
I thought there was going to be a monster on the wing of the plane.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen that episode of the original with William Shatner. I haven't seen it. But I feel like I think I've seen snippets of it before, and it's fucking scary and like really effective. And I think it's interesting because this is a really good premise for an episode, and I keep saying that, but it really is, and I think it's actually executed well.
And it involves a podcast.
It does. Dan Carlin, one of my favorite podcasters. There's so many great things about the episode, but I think it's just, I really chalk it up to bias that I was expecting a monster episode, and I didn't get it, and I think that's my own downfall in regards to the episode.
But sometimes, Tiny, the monsters are us.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Well, and also, this is one of the episodes that got screwed up for me. I didn't get to see the end.
Did you never watch the end?
I did. I finally did see it, and I liked it. I liked the ending a lot, actually. I thought that was really cool, very animalistic and savage at the end. That was really good. This should be probably ranked higher on my list.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I put it at 6. It should be at least 5th or 4th.
Okay.
I don't know. I really don't have a lot to say about it. I love Adam Scott.
Me too.
He's a really diverse actor because he's in, obviously people know him from silly comedies like Step Brothers and Parks and Rec and stuff like that, but he's a very talented dramatic actor.
Totally.
Check out Big Little Lies on HBO.
Yes.
He's phenomenal.
Well, I say yes, like I haven't watched any of it, but I think on Obsessive Viewer we're going to review the first 2 seasons once the second season ends.
Okay. Hopefully. Yeah, he's married to Reese Witherspoon in that show, and he like outshines her in some scenes.
Nice.
He's great. So I was really glad they picked him for a role like this. And I'm a big fan of his, and he did a great job. The pilot also, I can't ever think of this guy's name.
Chris Diamantopoulos.
There you go. Yeah.
Or the actual pilot.
The actor.
The pilot or the pilot.
The pilot.
Okay, yeah. Chris Diamantopoulos.
Okay.
I like saying his last name because I feel like I've never messed it up. And I like it. It's a mouthful, but
nice.
He's great.
He's a great like character actor. He's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the shit out of him every time I see him. So, and this, including this episode. So
yeah, I'm still super proud of my joke in the review.
Are you?
Yeah, about he was in Silicon Valley. He did the whole "this guy fucks" line.
Yeah.
So in the review, I said "this guy flights." So anyway,
oh man,
now you guys have heard that joke twice. So yeah, so how'd you feel about the ending of that one?
Yeah, the ending was good. Was cool. Like I said, the savagery of it, I think was. I didn't see it coming, but I thought it was a proportional response, I guess I'll say, which is very savage, but I think it made sense for the episode.
Nice.
It was good.
Cool. Yeah. Like I said, that's my number 3. It's one of my favorites of the season.
Okay. Nice.
I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to watch it again.
Yeah,
for sure. Also another really good set.
Oh, absolutely.
Good set, that plane. Number 5 is 6 Degrees of Freedom.
Nice. It's my number 2.
I don't have a lot to say about it. The theme or like the reveal was like one of my favorites.
Okay.
That was really cool.
How did you read that? Because a lot of people were confused about whether or not, is it a simulation or is it not a simulation? I took it to mean, do you want me to go ahead and tell you my like read of it?
Sure.
Or do you want to tell me yours?
Well, I don't think it was a simulation. I think it was, they're basically just being monitored. We're being monitored, if you will. Yeah. And somehow they got that guy out of space. I don't know. But I loved that like reveal. That was like really cool, and like I loved how the guy didn't even say anything, and like all we hear is this. We just see subtitles. We didn't even get to see the aliens.
Yeah,
and that was really cool. I thought that was really well done. But that was like the last minute.
Yeah.
And the other 24 minutes, or I don't even remember how long this was, leading up to it.
I think it was 45, I think.
Okay. The other 44 minutes, I was just like, okay, well, this is happening. Like, I really wasn't that into it.
That's so, okay, if you were to ask me what episode I thought you would latch onto the most, I would have said 6 Degrees of Freedom.
Really?
Yeah, because like I've told you this before, it just crosses so many lines on the Venn diagram of interest in science fiction for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we have similar taste and stuff, and I just thought that you would have been more into it. But, yeah, I loved that episode.
I probably need to see it again. And there's a lot of good things about it too, but I think one of the, I was just annoyed or, not at all interested in the constant flashing of like the date and time.
Yeah,
and
they did overdo that.
It was weird. Like the depiction of it was E to, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, estimated. Well, I didn't say ETA. But
no, I can't remember. But that was just up. And they'd show you like a 20-second scene, and they'd flash it again. The time, and it's just like, did I need that? I don't know if that was necessary. Just the depiction of the passage of time, I think, was a little sloppy.
Okay.
And then like some of the character interaction, I just didn't really care that much.
Interesting.
Which I know when we briefly discussed it before, you mentioned there's some parallels between this episode and one of our favorite sci-fi movies, Sunshine.
Yep.
And there are, without question, but I mean, Sunshine was just done to such better degree, and such better development.
What I love about this episode so much is, among many other things, because it's an episode that I truly do adore in the season. But one of the things I really appreciate about it is the setup. Like it is, I would go ahead and say it's by far, it's one of my favorite, 5-minute or however long segments of the opening scene. Like, it's my favorite, cold open of the season so far.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Or the whole season. Yeah. Just the setup of they're about to launch on a mission to Mars. The entire world's nuking each other. They're flying to Mars. And then just the way the camera spins around and reveals Jordan, giving his opening narration. And that opening narration is just beautiful. As you get more into my reviews, I get such a bug up my ass about the narrations and how let's see, 1, 2, 3. I want to say 7 or 8 of the 10 episodes start with some variation of meet this character. Or introducing this. Samir Wasan is an artist of great principle. It's the same thing. And that's, I don't know, that got to me. But the opening narration for 6 Degrees of Freedom was just so great.
Nice.
Yeah. And I love the music in that episode too. Just everything about it is great. Except for that stupid ska song.
Yeah, that's a dumbass song.
Yeah. And it's so cringeworthy when they're singing it. And it's just, that didn't work for me. But I love that episode so much.
Nice.
Yeah. What's your number 3?
Number 4. Number 4 is Blurry Man.
Oh, interesting. So, okay, this is exciting because I have no idea what you thought of this episode.
Okay.
And a peek behind the curtain, we're actually recording this before I record my bonus review of Blurry Man. So it's a little bit out of sequence here.
Okay.
So I haven't put together my notes and everything yet. How did you feel about this episode as someone who you don't, and this is kind of, maybe it's a cheap shot, but you don't have that, that sounds shitty. You're not a fan of the Twilight Zone.
Well, I'm not. I mean,
you've seen half of the first season.
Yeah.
I've seen 2 seasons of it.
Right.
But I've also I feel like
you've sat with it and dissected it a lot more than I have. Yeah.
But so we're varying degrees.
You're
of
an authority
fans.
on it. I'm not. You are.
Let's pump the brakes there, Tiny. People that listen to this have lived with the Twilight Zone for their entire lives. Let's not piss them off. I'm a what's a lower grade of authority? I'm a spectator of the first 2 seasons.
I'll give you a little more credit than that. But
well,
okay.
thank you. But no, so it's funny because you're kind of not as entrenched in the Twilight Zone as say I am, and people who counted as like their favorite show of all time and have lived with the Twilight Zone for decades, like they are on an entirely different level. So how did you feel about Blurry Man, which in its own way is a love letter to Serling and a depiction of the kind of the struggle of the writer in terms of adapting or taking the mantle of this prestigious and important property? Like, how did that resonate with you, and how did you feel about the episode?
The resonance of Rod Serling didn't land that well with me, I will admit, and that's a bit of a shortcoming on myself as the viewer, I guess. Okay. Because I'm not as like, this episode was for those people you were just describing. Yeah. It wasn't for me as well, as much.
This episode was for the people whose wagon I've been desperately chasing for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, still, when they revealed that it was Rod Serling, I knew who it was immediately, and I was like, oh, okay. That part was a little bit too meta for me. Okay, sure. And it just kind of, and the whole thing where they walked, like him and Zazie Bates walked through the doorways into the starlight, that was just a little hokey, honestly. I think it was a little silly. But I think this is the most high concept episode of the season, and I appreciated what they did.
It's the most high concept episode of the season, and they had a 12-year-old president episode.
Oh my god.
But I agree.
But no, I mean, I was really into the episode. I mean, it's my number 4. It's not like I'm shitting on it.
Right,
like it was a good episode, damn good episode. The ending just fell off for me because it just wasn't, that ending wasn't for me. And so I didn't connect to it the way that I'm sure a lot of people lost their minds for, and that's great. And like, I got it. It just didn't have the attachment for me. Right. But everything leading up to that, I thought was really cool. I loved I thought the star of the, like when I saw the previews, I thought the star of the episode was Seth Rogen. Same here. And like, that was cool. I was like, oh, cool, Seth Rogen.
People on like the Twilight Zone subreddit before the episode aired, like there was one thread that like I just caught a peep of, because I didn't watch the trailers or anything, but like one thread like before it aired was like, well, the trailer kind of confirms that this episode is Seth Rogen kind of in a reimagined episode of Time Enough at Last, basically. I'm like, you could not get farther from it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so in those first, the moment that Jordan Peele breaks the fourth wall, and I like, one of the biggest surprises and coolest moments of the season for me. How did you feel about that?
Absolutely, same way. Yeah. I was like, this is interesting. I really like what they're doing here, and like, I thought it was like funny how Seth Rogen had like 10 lines. Right. Like, he really didn't say a lot, and he was just kind of there. Like, that was really well done. And I loved the whole. I feel the way my connect for the episode was. It was a bit of a love letter to writers as well. Yeah. Like, and like how difficult, I think sci-fi is probably, good sci-fi is probably one of the top couple hardest genres to write. Right. Like, I really think it is. And that's why a lot of sci-fi fails, because it doesn't have the right writer, or it's just not there, and it's hard to do. But the Twilight Zone has done it right. In the past, did it right so many times that this story belongs in this universe, in this dimension. And I think that's why the episode worked so well, is because this is vintage. It feels like vintage Twilight Zone. Interesting. And again, it was scary, like where she's in the empty set being stalked by the Blurry Man. That was well done in and of itself. And then just the high concept of it was also just really cool, and how it was meta, and I don't know, I can't
there were a few things. I'll kind of rapid fire it, because I haven't like I said, I haven't recorded my review of it yet, so all of this is going to be stuff that has been more fleshed out in my review that the listeners have already heard. But there are a few things in this episode that I really loved. So first of all, Seth Rogen, like in the episode that they're filming of the Twilight Zone, I love that because it is a nod to the original series' first season finale. Called A World of His Own, I think. I get it confused with A World of Difference. It's A World of Difference. It's the season finale, season 1, in which a writer is he dictates, much like how Serling wrote. He used a dictation machine and he would dictate his scripts and everything to it. There's a writer in that episode who, anytime he says or he creates a character, that character becomes real in real life. And that episode also, I don't know if I'd say breaks the fourth wall. It kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit. But it's so cool. Spoilers for the first season finale of the original series, but it ends with Rod Serling. It's the first time Rod Serling is on screen giving his narration, because the first season doesn't have him on screen. And he's saying it, and then the writer in the episode takes the tape from his dictation machine in an envelope that says Rod Serling. He's like, you know what, I'm done with you or whatever, and he tosses it in the fire, and then Rod Serling kind of looks at the camera and in a kind of winky ways, well, I guess that's how it goes or whatever like that, and then he disappears. Cool. His whole episode is him disappearing the characters he creates.
Okay.
And I love that because this episode, Blurry Man, is similar to that to an extent, but the episode that they're filming is a play on that because Seth Rogen's character is writing things and they're happening outside.
Right.
I love that kind of subtle kind of thing. But the whole chase sequence throughout the sets and everything, it was scary, sure, but it was also, it felt a little bit reductive, it felt a little bit a
little shoehorned, maybe. A
little bit. One of the problems I had with Not All Men was, the moment where it becomes a home invasion story. The score sounds a lot like Scream. And that's not a surprise since Marco Beltrami is one of the composers of the show and he composed all the Scream movies. But all the Zazie beats running through the set thing just felt like slasher chase sequences, and it was it felt like fluff in an episode that is built around substance. So
that's true.
But yeah, so yeah, and it's funny because I get it not resonating with the Rod Serling thing, and the CGI is a little bit dodgy.
They did pretty good.
Yeah, it was acceptable, but it wasn't MCU Captain Marvel stuff.
Right.
But I'm not above saying I have talked about this at this point. I almost lost it. I almost
wow.
was in tears because it was just the power of that. It was just so moving to me, and just being with that character, with Zazie Beetz' character, who has professed her love for the Twilight Zone and how important it is to her, and having it be that ending was just so beautiful to me.
Nice.
So, and I people on Twitter, I mentioned I was nearly moved to tears, and then someone replied was I was fucking bawling.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope I can get to that point at some point and appreciate it more as an episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
So, was that your number one for the season?
It was, but I think that is gonna swap out, it's neck and neck with 6 Degrees of Freedom.
Okay.
For me. So,
okay, cool.
But yeah, it is my number one.
All right.
Pending my actual review. So what's your number 2?
3. Replay.
Oh, interesting.
3. Yeah.
That's my number 4.
I don't have a ton to say about it, really. I just think it was, I really, this was the most edge of my seat I kind of got for the whole season. And I think the reason was I was curious to see how she was going to rectify this conundrum she was in.
Sure.
Cause it seemed like there was no way out. Somebody was going to get shot and killed, or she was going to have to kill someone, or it just seemed really, the stakes just were super high, and that just really worked on me. For whatever reason.
Did you listen to my review?
I have not gotten to this one yet. So.
Okay, cool.
But I was curious, was the cop was he like kind of a supernatural entity, or was he just like super racist?
I'm glad that you asked me that,
because I really don't know. And
I think that episode was one of the best written episodes for me throughout the whole season.
Okay.
In my read of that, and it's a read that I feel like is right because it's me saying it. But no, also I just feel like it's something that a lot of people seem to have missed, is that he is a metaphor. Like he's a police officer, but the character himself is an amalgamation of the racist institutions of like our world that are actively working to keep minorities oppressed.
Okay.
So like this is perfectly, like it's summed up perfectly when I think it's the first time that they get pulled over when what was the kid's name? Damson Idris is the actor's name.
I don't remember.
Hang on. Dorian.
Okay.
Yeah, so he gets pulled over and the cop comes up, and it's like this is all you need to know about the subtext of this episode and like the meaning behind what the cop represents. So he walks up to the car. As he's walking up, he glides his hand over it, kind of a like subtle like sense of ownership, like this is, they shouldn't have this should be mine kind of thing. He goes up to the window and he tells Dorian, he says, like, do you know why I pulled you over? And Dorian says, I was going too fast. And the cop says, well, since you admitted it, I'll let that slide. So that, to me, is this young black man is telling this racist entity that he was going too fast, and that's why the racist entity was stopping him. And the kind of subtext of that is that they're taking him to college. Like, he's going to college to better his life and to be, like, do that. So, like, him saying, like, I was going too fast is, like, double meaning of him, like, oh, he's moving too fast. And he should be oppressed to, like, his...
that's clever. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, and I was just like, that is just brilliant. Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that is brilliant.
Yeah, and I was so enamored with the script, and it's another perfect example of the show taking a perspective and giving that perspective to the audience, and like I just think that they did it really well.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of the review I did of that, so check that out.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff I picked up on, there's like an Underground Railroad metaphor, obviously, and the actor who plays the police officer is I don't know his name.
Crap.
I just know him from the first season of True Detective.
Yeah,
really creepy guy.
He was also in Boardwalk Empire.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I wish I had more to say about it. I just loved the stakes of the episode. That's what I really appreciated. And I'm very, as far as the theme of the episode, oppressing minorities and, racism and, authoritative cops, police brutality. I have very mixed feelings on some of those themes, police brutality especially. And so it was an interesting episode to navigate in that regards, because I didn't empathize with the cop,
right? But
I can't help but put myself in the shoes of both characters or both sides, and obviously the cop was way out of line every single time. I'm not empathizing or defending the cop, but it's
right.
That's usually in that scenario. That's usually what I gravitate towards. Like when I see these videos on social media or whatever, I'm like, okay, I need to. I think about the perspective of the police officer first, and a lot of the time they act egregiously and wrongfully and downright evil sometimes, and they screw up. Trust me, I'm not. A lot of the times I'm very critical of cops. cops.
Right.
But I also have a huge respect for them at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah. I need to finish my thought. You have a criminal justice degree.
I do. Thank you.
And like I've talked about it on the podcast, I come from a police family. My father was a retired police officer. My brother's a police officer. My brothers are police officers. Mm-hmm. I have police upbringing and everything.
Yeah.
And like my kind of attitude has shifted considerably because I used to be like when I was a teenager and stuff, because, you know, when you're a teenager, you just kind of, you know, everything is so exact. There's no gray area when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
So like, immediately it's like, oh, you know, police are great and everything.
Right.
But like I just watched the Phoenix tape. Like, did you see the footage of the Phoenix cops?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's so fucking disturbing.
Really?
It's like, so basically this family, African American family, with a 4-year-old daughter, were at a Dollar Tree or something, or Dollar General or something like that.
Okay.
And their daughter had left, when they were leaving, the daughter had picked up a doll, and they didn't pay for it, and they left. The parents didn't realize it. So they get into their car. At some point between them leaving and them getting to the car, police were called. Swarm of police come up with their guns drawn, screaming, just heightened, escalated everything, screaming that they're going to put a cap in their ass,
Jesus.
that they're going to fucking die, if they don't put their hands up. The woman is like saying like, I can't put my hands up. I have a baby in my arms. I'm pregnant. I can't do that. Like, you're not being clear with me. And it's just like, it's just the most, I mean, I don't understand how that, like, whenever I don't read much, I don't read much about, like, you know, the different sides and everything. I formulate my own opinion. I don't want to engage in any conversation because it's just such a fucking drain. Like, we currently have people debating the semantics of what a concentration camp is.
Right.
When the actual thing is that, like, oh, people are being placed in internment camps, essentially, that are being called, like, dog pounds and just dehumanizing them and everything. Don't fucking argue semantics. But, like, I can't fathom someone watching the video of, like, the Phoenix officers and thinking, like, oh, they're right, because they don't know what's going on.
Right.
Like, they don't know what's going on. Like, okay, they're still escalating it to a point that doesn't need escalation.
Right.
Like, that's not their fucking job.
Right.
Their fucking job is to protect and serve. It's infuriating.
Yeah, clearly.
So,
wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know if I should watch that one or not.
Yeah. I would say do it. Watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of defend myself, I think the reason why I gravitate towards that is because I empathize with, I'm a very empathic person, and cops have a ridiculously hard job.
Yeah.
And so they deal with pieces of shit every day. And so my automatic standpoint is, if I'm interacting with a police officer, I'm like, this dude has a horrible fucking job, and like, he's probably having a shitty day.
Yeah.
His good days would be a shitty day for most other people.
Right.
And so I'm like, I want to make his job as easy as I possibly can. And so that's kind of where I come from. But then you see videos like that, and it's like, there's no excuse whatsoever.
Yeah. And like, I used to be kind of a homer for police officers.
Yeah.
Like, when like something would come out and they would be like, oh, it's like an actual, like, you know, officer involved shooting and everything. Like, I've reached a point where like everything has become so heightened and everything, and everything is so politicized and everything that, like, it used to be like, when that happened, I would be empathic toward it and everything, and I would think like, well, you can't know how you're going to react in that situation. Like, you can't know, like it's a life-changing moment and everything. But like, I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, if you're in that position, if you are a police officer and you are in a position where you, like, your job description is, you could come to a life or death situation that takes a fraction of a second to make a decision. If you can't make that decision, make the proper decision in that situation, and that ends up like killing someone, you shouldn't have that fucking job.
Right.
Like, it's easy to like armchair like discuss it and everything and say like, well, you don't know what it's like and everything. It's like, okay, well, that's because I don't want to be a fucking cop. Like, I don't want to become a police officer because I know I wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
So it's either something that, needs to be taught better, or people that aren't fit to be police officers should not be police officers.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do kind of hope someday I get caught in a like a DUI checkpoint, though, because
really?
I will be an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
Because those are so unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah.
Which our friend who's a police officer, Fecus, agrees.
Yeah.
He says they're unconstitutional. So
Yeah.
I was like, see? He agrees. But yeah, I kind of hope I do, and I kind of hope I don't, because I will kind of be a dick.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. Like, what I love about Replay is that it is a really intense and, by my perception of it, truthful, like, depiction of what it's like to be a minority in those situations. Like, we're both white men in our 30s. Like, if we can afford to be a dick because, like, if we had grown up as minorities, there's no fucking way that I wouldn't at least feel comfortable saying like, oh, I would be a total dick to that cop, because like, if I were a minority, like, that would mean like, stands a pretty good chance that I would get shot and killed because of just how institutionalized the racism is.
You have to acknowledge there's a difference.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's something that so many people are so unwilling to acknowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's your number 3.
Yeah.
Anything more on Replay?
Yeah, long-winded there. No, I think we covered it pretty well.
So there's 2 more left. And
yeah.
Do you mind if I guess which one is which?
Sure.
Number 1. Okay. I'm going to say that Blue Scorpion is number 2.
That's correct.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, good call.
Okay, cool.
Good call. So yeah, the Blue Scorpion. Man, I really loved this episode.
I'm so happy to hear that. Like,
well, and it's easy. Some people, and you might be thinking, well, yeah, you're a fucking gun nut. Of course you love the episode.
Well, no.
That's not even why.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the opposite, because what I love about this episode, and not to bogart your segment here, but what I love about it is that it's a gun episode, but it's not about gun control.
Not at all. Yeah.
Like, this season has been so like, oh, here's police violence, or here's, minority violence against minorities. Here's immigration. Here's misogyny and everything. But this is like, oh, here's a gun, but here's a character story along with it. I just love it for that. So go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely. What I love about the episode is that I think it's probably in second place for the second or third place for the most vintage Twilight Zone feel.
Nice.
Out of any scenes or any episode of the season. Just very, it's funny because it's so like plot and character driven. It's kind of both. Like it's plot driven, but the character is so good and so enamored with this thing.
And Chris O'Dowd, man,
he did a great job. Yeah. I was like, dang, I didn't know he had that in him necessarily. But yeah, I think it's...
We all saw the Cloverfield Paradox, Tiny.
Yeah, Jesus. I pretty much forgot that movie.
Yep.
But no, I think it has this, there's like this talismanic, quality to the episode that's like so satisfying. It's like the Maltese Falcon or like, something else, a talisman is what it feels like, but it happens to be this tool of destruction. Like it has this other quality to it that's sort of enigmatic in and of itself that makes it especially intriguing. And I love the progression of it. I love the psychosis and how it's a very isolating thing. And there's just so many elements at play. This guy just lost his dad. Yeah. He's in the middle of a divorce. He's having career issues. And then you throw in this curveball of this talisman, this random device that just has such a hold on him and throws an even bigger wrench into everything. And just the happenstance with which all that chaos concludes is, I didn't see that coming at all. I thought this was going to be a very dark, just completely dark episode in the end. But, and the way it comes full circle with the kids finding it at the end, and man, it was like just damn near a perfect episode. In my mind. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about it. And I love, I think Twilight Zone is great at employing disembodied voices. The guy on the phone, like the gun dealer on the phone, was really. Did I recognize that voice?
Yeah, did you?
I think I can picture him, but I don't know his name.
Oh, okay. Who do you think it was?
Gosh, he was in 24.
Yeah. I did not pick it up until I saw the
older guy with the white hair.
Yeah, James Morrison.
James Morrison. There you go.
Bill Buchanan in 24.
There you go. Yeah. He has a very recognizable voice.
Yeah.
But anyways, I liked his and I just know so many guys like that, like gun nuts. Like when the gun goes off, he's like, "Hey brother, are you okay?" And like he calls him brother. I was like, that's such a thing to say.
Yeah.
For oh my god.
I feel like so I've been I've been trying to be really thorough with my reviews and everything. And my review of the Blue Scorpion, I feel like that's the one review I got kind of carried away. I haven't received any emails about it or anything. But like there's a moment at the end when the brilliance of this episode for me, and it's my number 5, but I think it deserves to be higher up. But the brilliance of it to me is that it is a character story first, and then it has its message kind of buried underneath it. And that message is, it could have easily been like a gun control kind of story.
Right.
But they didn't do a gun control story. Instead, they did this disturbed man flirting with the unthinkable. And that led to kind of the fetishization of inanimate objects that are meant for destruction.
Right.
And like the romanticism and the fetishization of like guns in our society and everything. Like this, like he very clearly was there to kill someone, and then he ends up, the gun ends up firing independently and killing another Jeff.
Right.
But the point in the episode in my review where I kind of got a little carried away, was that if you freeze frame it on the newspaper clipping at the end where it's like celebrating, Jeff as a hero, I freeze framed it and read it and like I made notes and everything because that's where I am in my life. But I mentioned that like it's so indicative of a certain type of person who is all about guns. Like anytime there's like a tragedy or anything, like in the article it says like police representative says that well, we're really thankful that Jeff was there and had a handgun and was at the right place in the right time and was exercising his right or whatever, and had a gun and everything. When, like, the real story is that he's there to kill someone. Right. Because he's at the lowest point of his life. And what I kind of took that to be was indicative of, like, just the culture of gun ownership that, like, the whole idea of, like, oh, well, you need it for self-protection and everything. And, like, I've been on record saying like, okay, there are people in my life who at some point have like basically badgered me into like getting a gun or whatever. Yeah. And like, cause it's my constitutional right. It's like, even before I was like diagnosed with like depression and stuff, like I know that like it's not responsible for me to have a gun because literally my chemical makeup in my brain makes my mind occasionally occasionally not behave in a way that I, should. Like, I have downer days and everything. Not to say that I would ever, like, use a gun for anything, like, unthinkable. But, like, if I can't trust my own mindset, like, there's no fucking reason why I should have a firearm and everything. But the part in the episode where I got kind of carried away, was that I got onto a rant about how after the Dark Knight Rises shooting, I saw people on Facebook saying like, well, if someone had a gun in that theater, a lot less people would have died. and like that's patently inaccurate. Like
no, it's super dark
it's a
in there.
Super dark theater. Opening weekend, the guy had gas grenades.
He didn't even have to aim.
Yeah, like yeah. And like I said, like if you like in the episode, I said if you legitimately think that, then go fuck yourself. And I mean that like sincerely.
Yeah.
And now that I'm recounting it, I'm not going to apologize. I don't care. Like that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And I've said it twice on this podcast, but yeah. And also, I think you'll appreciate this. I said in the episode that, and I've known a lot of people that are responsible gun owners and that are very like even-headed about it and everything. I've also known some of the dumbest people in my entire life who are gun nuts.
Yep.
So
we've worked with them.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to what do you think?
I agree with that. But I have a concealed carry permit and I do carry from time to time. But one place that I always carry is like movie theaters.
Oh yeah.
And it's because it's a legitimate, and I fully acknowledge this. It's like a paranoia fear because of media coverage of those events of the Batman shooting and stuff like that. And it's not like every time, but like when I went to see Endgame, I was like, this is a big headline grabbing show. Like somebody could want to get famous and bring a gun to this, start shooting people up. And it makes me feel better to have it. And that's all it is. And I agree with it. I know people who are just, they are chomping at the bit for somebody to do something so that they can pull out their gun and shoot them. Yep. And that's scary, frankly.
And like, it's funny because like I know that you and I differ on this topic, I think, and like even Kirsten
a little bit, but not as much as you think, probably.
Okay. Well, like my whole thing is like, okay, I went on a rant about this in the episode, so sorry for the repetition, but if you have to get a license to operate a motor vehicle, like you should have a license to own a firearm. Like you have to pass a test. Like that's
I agree with that. It is easier to get a concealed carry permit than it is to get a driver's license. Yep. That is a ridiculous statement. Yep. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I'm a gun nut, but there are, well, sorta, but like there are a lot of opinions I have that would piss off real gun nuts.
Yeah.
Like
I'm a gun nut. We're sort of. What are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. What's your number 2 favorite episode of this season? Right.
But yeah, it's one of those, like I had a conversation with Kirsten, the recurring co-host on Obsessive Viewer, about gun control and everything. And like she's super liberal and everything. Right. And I was like I said, I told her about having depression and stuff. And I'm like, people like me who have a diagnosed mental illness, even if it's mild like mine is, we should not be able to have guns. Right. That's just point of fact that should not be a thing.
Should be a red flag at the very least.
Exactly. Yeah. We should not be legally allowed to obtain a firearm. It's just, and there are people who have much, much worse mental disorders than what I have. But it's just like that should be just so obvious, but it's not. So,
and I have heard people say, I believe that every man, woman, and child should own and know how to operate a firearm. Yep. I've heard people say that. Yep. More than once. One
of the aforementioned dumbest people I've ever met. Yeah. Said that something to the effect of every 8-year-old should be able to should know how to fire a gun.
Jeez.
Or something. So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some opinions that I have that I know that we disagree on, but like those kids from Parkland who created their own organization and stuff like that, I probably agree with, I'd say 80 to 90% of what those kids are touting and putting out there. And I'm an exception. I happen to be a member of the NRA. If you pulled the NRA, I would be the exception. Right. But still, I'm trying to defend myself as a semi-rational person. So, but yeah, I am going to spend the entire weekend shooting guns. So, but that's not a typical weekend for me. Yeah.
So, in that same thing, I'm so excited about this. On that same note, not only are you going to spend all weekend shooting guns, you're going to be in, is it Ohio?
Ohio, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be a traveler.
I am.
To Ohio. So you're number one. Were you done with the Blue Scorpion?
Well, quickly, I loved the scene where he fires the gun for the first time.
Okay.
Because that is a real thing. Like, I never had anyone in my family who owned firearms, and so I never had any exposure to them until I was like 18 or 19. And ironically, the first gun I ever fired was your brother's.
Oh, wow.
Like, your brother taught me how to shoot, and I went shooting for the first time with Ray. And like, I was like super nervous and like, oh man, what's this going to be like? And it just, and like I pulled the trigger and I was like, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's a lot of power. Okay. And like I kept going, like I just really enjoyed it. And like, that's what I enjoy about it. I enjoy the engineering and the sporting of it and the recreation of it.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily all about the right to bear arms and all that stuff. That's not necessarily my enjoyment of firearms. And so in the episode, the emotion or the face work of Chris O'Dowd when he pulls that trigger for the first time, I was like, that is perfectly exactly how it is. That is for people who become gun nuts or who like firearms. That is exactly how you feel, because it's like that, like wielding that power, like that's a real thing, and it's a little obnoxious and a little douchey, but it's a real thing. It's an actual emotion or a reaction that you have to that much power, and it's not addictive. I'm not addicted to it. I actually don't go shooting very often, but it's just a cool notion, and it's something that I think a lot of people who are like me have that moment. And like, you don't really see that moment in movies hardly ever. Like sometimes, or like if you see it as in a comedy and it's like it's a joke, and it's not taken seriously at all. But I just loved the way that scene was depicted, because I was like, I know exactly how he feels, and that is a perfect depiction of that.
I love
that
the music
moment
in that scene too. I thought it was scored very well.
I can't remember the music.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had to say that
Nice.
I liked that part of it really well. So,
Cool.
and
you're
I'm
going to be a traveler and
yeah.
go to Ohio. So
I think the gun was a Browning high power, by the way.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just to put that out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are those notoriously afraid of sunlight or afraid of the dark?
No. But it's a very old gun, very kind of a popular gun.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm one of those people who, it's douchey as hell, but anytime I see a gun in a movie, I'm like, oh, that's an Israeli-made G36 or whatever. Like, I try to...
It's your interest. It's your hobby.
It's silly, yeah. But anyways.
Anyway.
So, Blue Scorpion liked it, number 2.
Yes.
My number 1 was A Traveler.
I'm so pleased by that and interested. So
really?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I think for me, this was the most Twilight Zone-y episode of the season, and I just loved the twists and turns that it took. I wasn't sure if it was going to go like a full-on sci-fi way, or if it was going to be more of a mysterious type thing. And like, this is just a mysterious character who has some, is he kind of a supernatural kind of thing, and they ended up going this sci-fi route, and I was really pleased with that. And I love how it wasn't like in your face. I feel like it was all it was very X-Files-y.
Yeah.
They don't give you like a bunch of monster scenes or whatever, or like, blatant detail of what the alien looks like. There's a lot of implication, and there's, a lot of subtle scenes. And I really appreciated the metaphors too, or the whole, kind of the white man oppressing the native tribes, the Inuits, was a really interesting theme that I didn't see coming. And, I talk about isolation. This was a cool, isolated story, physically, geographically isolated. I think that's, I don't know. Like I said, I said it when we talked about Hold the Dark. Alaska is a great setting for a story, any story, because it's just crazy.
And that episode was written or co-written? It was fully written by Glenn Morgan, who wrote for X-Files.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he also, I want to say he also wrote Ice, which also takes place in...
Oh, really?
Like an Alaskan outpost.
That's funny.
Episode.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in this episode that appeal to me personally. So there's bias here. I'm not going to say there's not.
Sure.
I think realistically, objectively, this is probably like a 3rd or 4th spot kind of episode, but it just spoke to me on so many levels. It really had an X-Files feel to it, and like the kind of the conspiracy of the X-Files, it sort of played into that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I just really loved the sort of the ending or the last scene where the brother's like, maybe it'll be better with you guys in charge. I was like, man, that's just because that's not a reaction you see
right
in this type of story. It's, it's always fear or terror or just, panic, chaos.
Yeah.
This guy was like, well, he knew exactly what was going on. Mm-hmm. And he was really calm about it. They fucking had pie together. Like, that is I just did not see that coming.
And I had such an interesting, kind of a darker read on that.
Okay.
Maybe I probably read a little too much into it, to be honest. But on the first hand, I was very much on record. You haven't listened to the episode? No.
Not yet, no.
I just, the whole recurrence of the pie thing, like, I was just like, shut the fuck up about the pie, please.
Yeah.
Like, just stop.
He was a little annoying.
Yeah, he was a bit much.
Yeah.
But the ending where he's like, well, maybe it would be better with you guys in charge, like, I felt that was a more depressing kind of ending for the character. Because, like, he's a character who has been, like, he has opposed the kind of white man that's taken over his land and everything.
There's kind of a double meaning there.
Yeah, I feel like he's been so beaten down by the erasure of his, is that a word? Erasure?
I think so. Let's go with it.
Is that a word? His? Erasure of his like homeland and his identity. His culture,
yeah.
His everything. That, like, when he sees, like, another entity coming to usurp that which has oppressed his people, he's just like, okay, he's just gonna align with this one, because maybe it'll be better under them.
Right.
And I thought that was a very just kind of powerful ending.
I didn't pick up on that kind of double meaning. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I like it even more now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed Stephen Yen as well.
Oh, yeah. Yun.
Yeah. Good acting on his part.
Steven.
Nice. Stefan. He's with a V though, isn't he? Steven.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Anyways, I feel like I hadn't been able to appreciate, Greg Kinnear in quite a while.
Same here. I feel like he's done like a lot of faith-based movies.
He has.
Yeah.
More than one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been like, Greg Kinnear sucks now. I'm not saying that, but like,
right.
I haven't seen him in anything in several years where I was like, man, he was really good. Mm-hmm. Until I saw this episode. I thought he was great.
Amazing.
As like the completely unaware of how racist and oppressive he's being.
Completely clueless.
Right. And
like,
just, yeah.
He has this drawl to his voice that he does. Like, he's like, when he's like kind of on his high horse about like, where he's talking about, how like, oh, I'm gonna butcher it, but he's like, the good Lord's brought us an honest goodness stranger, and we're gonna get a twofer and stuff. Like, he has this like, kind of drawl to him that's just like, he's so clueless, and it fits so perfectly.
It does.
Yeah.
So I just really dug this episode. Just like I said, a lot that spoke to me on a personal level.
Nice.
It was really good.
Sweet. Yeah, that's my number 7, but I'll have to redo my ratings. Yeah, real quick, do you want to recount 10 to 1?
Yeah, 10 was The Wonderkind, 9 was Not All Men, 8 The Comedian, 7 Point of Origin, 6 Nightmare at 30,000 Feet, 5 6 Degrees of Freedom, 4 Blurry Man, 3 Replay, 2 The Blue Scorpion, and 1 A Traveler.
Nice. In my top 10, 10 was The Wonderkind. Point of Origin was number 9. Number 8 was The Comedian. Number 7 was A Traveler. Number 6, Not All Men. Number 5, The Blue Scorpion. Number 4, Replay. Number 3, Nightmare at 30,000 Feet. Number 2, 6 Degrees of Freedom. And number 1, Blurry Man. Now, Tiny, I had a whole bunch of stuff, but we're going to skip over all that.
Okay.
So having watched the first season, it has been renewed for season 2, thankfully. What do you want to see in season 2 of The Twilight Zone? What adjustments would you like to see them make? Are there any actors that you want to see appear or reappear in different roles? How do you feel about season 2? What would you like to see?
I just love this is like a tentpole sci-fi franchise. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to see some kind of famous sci-fi actors in it. I think if they pulled in David Duchovny to be in an episode,
cool.
or Gillian Anderson for that matter, or just any of the Star Trek actors from any of the Star Trek franchises. I think would be fun. I don't know, just kind of like sci-fi actors, and also TV actors like Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad would be cool. Terry O'Quinn, again, TV sci-fi. Yeah. It'd be great to see Terry O'Quinn in something. Awesome. A bunch of people from Lost. Yeah, those are kind of the actors I had in mind. As far as like episodes and plots, I really don't know. I mean, more like the top 4 or 5 episodes from this season, you know, I feel like, I don't know, like I said, I whatever that element is that I feel like is kind of missing from this season, I hope they find it in the second season. Yeah. But even if they don't, this is still some really entertaining quality television. Nice. And it's funny, we didn't really talk about, not much anyways, we didn't really talk about like the mature nature of the episodes, like the cursing and stuff like that. And,
fuck yeah.
Yeah. There's no like excessive gore or nudity.
Right.
But I feel like the cursing and stuff isn't really necessary.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like in some instances, it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, because it's like they're a kid whose parents aren't home. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, guys, we can curse. Let's say it. Yeah. Fuck. Oh my God, we said it. Like, that's kind of what it feels like. And it's a little, it's just kind of juvenile and just not, I'd rather just wasn't there.
I didn't mind it until A Traveler, with Jack Mangoyak, her brother, hit like every single line was just like, it was overdoing it. Like,
right.
It was just so, it took me out of it.
Yeah.
And then even like in The Wonderkind, people were like loving John Larroquette's scene and everything, where he's like the president that just lost the election.
Right.
But like, I was just like, it's 3 minutes into the episode and he's dropped like 4 F-bombs.
Yeah.
He's talking about a shit-laden diaper that he's eating and everything. It's just like, it's too much. It's just like, I don't know, but.
Laid it on a little too thick, I think.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. If it's like a moment of exasperation where the person's like, holy fuck, or like,
right. Like,
what the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's different.
Like the ending of Replay when she says, back the fuck up to the cops.
Right.
Like, that had power behind it.
Right.
It's also, relevant. I didn't mention this about Blurry Man, but did you catch any of the Blurry Man figures in any of the episodes? Cause he's,
no, not at all.
Me neither, except for, Replay, because it's not like a blurry thing. He's just like, he's there. But that's what I loved about it. For a season that is so, that was so on the nose with all of its Easter eggs and stuff, there are tons of Easter eggs to the original series that are just kind of in your face.
Nice.
But for a show that was so in your face with that kind of thing, to have them have this running visual Easter egg that I think one podcast that I listened to, I don't know offhand which one it was, one podcast out of the like 7 or 8 that I listened to solely reviewing this series, only one of them recognized one of the Easter eggs and in like the Blue Scorpion.
Wow.
Or I think it was, in Point of Origin, or I don't know what it was in, but it like, they realized that and they just saw like, oh, that was weird. Like, no one picked up on this running thing of a blurry figure.
Yeah.
I love it for that. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So real quick, my kind of season 2 wish list is less emphasis on social commentary and more emphasis on character building and storytelling. Like the season, the Twilight Zone as a platform for storytelling is incredible. Like there are some incredibly ingenious stories in at least the first 2 seasons of the original series. Like just if you like go watch another homework assignment for you, Tiny, go watch season 2 episode like 25, The Silence. Like that's an episode that has no science fiction or fantasy elements to it, but the storytelling is just wonderful. It's fantastic. And so I want that, and I kind of want more ambiguous or open-ended endings.
Okay.
Like as much as I like Nightmare 30,000 Feet's ending, it would have been better for me if it had ended with the plane just disappearing and just a mystery.
Yeah, okay.
And then finally, and this will never happen, but I think it would be really cool if they took and it'll never happen, but it'll never happen with this current format. 10 episode seasons, this will never happen, but it would be cool if they had like science fiction and fantasy and horror writers write some episodes.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I just think that's one thing in the original series that was so great, is it was a platform for like unique voices in science fiction and fantasy to pen episodes and everything. Like Serling would buy scripts from writers and stories from writers. One of like the episode I shot an arrow into the air was, the concept of it was this woman approached Serling at a party and was like, "Hey, what about an episode where this happens?" And he's like, "Hey, let me buy that from you." And then he wrote the script.
Wow.
Like that kind of thing. I want to see that incorporated into
nice.
This. So yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, it's freaking midnight. I'm
It
so
is.
sorry, Tiny.
No, it's all right.
So we both have to get up early in the morning for work, and Tiny needs to go home. He's not going to stay over. Podcast slumber party? No? Okay. Fourth podcast?
I'll pass.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Tiny, for joining me today on Anthology. Go ahead and tell people where they can find you and those other two podcasts you're involved with.
Yeah. So you can find, search for the Obsessive Viewer Podcast. You can find it on Facebook. You can follow Matt on Twitter for that, at Obsessive Viewer. You can join our Facebook, chat group, or what's it called?
Facebook group.
The Facebook group.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if it had a different title. We post things in there and occasionally take polls and post news and stuff. So join that and you can discuss things with us. And then for Tower Junkies, did you create another Twitter for that?
I did, yeah.
Tower Junkies Pod?
Yep.
That's what I thought. Okay. So yeah, just search for Tower Junkies Podcast and you can find it across the internets.
Yeah, nice.
And you can find me personally. I don't really do Twitter or Instagram. And I kind of have a private Facebook, but you can find me on Letterboxd. I post the movies I've watched on there. The occasional review. I haven't done very many, but I kind of need to do more, but you can find me on Letterboxd at Tiny Person, or Obsessive Tiny.
Obsessive Tiny.
Obsessive Tiny. I don't even know. I can't remember. So yeah, you can find me there.
Sweet. Well, thanks again, Tiny. And, I look forward to, maybe having you back on at some point for something.
Sure.
The kind of concept for this podcast is a little difficult for guests, but
it is.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for listening, and that'll do it for this thing. Next up on the feed, I don't know what the next main feed episode is going to be, but I have promised you guys, and I will fulfill that promise. I'm going to do 3 episodes about the new season of Black Mirror, so look forward to that in the coming weeks. I might take like a week off after this, but those episodes are imminent. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Anthology is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to anthologypod.com/archive. You can also like the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod and follow the show on Twitter at OVAnthologyPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at anthologypod.com/donate or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. Official Anthology merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, can be found in the Obsessive Viewers TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at anthologypod.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at tpublic.com. For information about the Obsessive Viewers annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Tower Junkies, a podcast where Matt and co-host Tiny share their love of all things Stephen King and his magnum opus, The Dark Tower series, over at towerjunkiespod.com and at towerjunkiespod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Bumper music for this podcast comes courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. You can also find As Good As It Gets music on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Kitty!